Employees of Disney, what is the craziest thing you've seen happen in the park? Probably a little late, but I was working in the kitchen at Cinderella's castle when this family of 4 came in for their dinner. About halfway through the dinner, the husband politely stands up and taps his glass for attention. He announced that his wife of 15 years has been cheating on him for over a year. The entire place stood still in shock. He motioned for his kids, paid the waitress, and left the wife crying at the table. Happiest place in the world. Overnight cast member here. Please leave your cremated loved ones at home. Stop dumping them in haunted mansion. They just get vacuumed up and disposed of. I didn't know this was a thing. Are there any reasons for someone to dump ashes there? Undefined. This is how they supply the ghosts for the haunted mansion. A co-worker of mine at Disney World once helped escort Michael Jackson through some employee-only areas to avoid the crowd surrounding him. He got an autograph on a napkin. MJ used to sneak in wearing a disguise and go around solo. Or at least that's what the old-timers that used to work Captain EO told me. I saw MJ once at Disneyland in Anaheim on Tom Sawyer Island. He was wearing a red knee-length coat with a fur-edged hood, even though it was the middle of summer. My mom said, "There's Michael Jackson." And we were really close to him and just looked at him in awe. He was alone as far as I could tell and was just happily wandering around the island. Suddenly, a crowd noticed him and swarmed him. Some Disney employees got to him really quickly and whisked him away. It is a moment in my life I will never forget. I was a Disney employee for the summer. My 2 favorite memories. 1. Coming out of a bathroom stall and washing my hands next to a half-dressed Mary Poppins. 2. I was sitting with a group of guys by where Mickey and Minnie get dressed. When they came out, the guys started catcalling Minnie. The guy that was Mickey said, in a perfect Mickey voice, "If you look at my girlfriend again, I'm gonna pop ya." I worked ODV outdoor vending. One night I witnessed Tinkerbell get stuck on her wire above the castle during the fireworks show in 05. He almost got burned up by those fireballs during the Indiana Jones portion of the show. They eventually turned off the spotlight on her, and she just hung there until they were able to reel her in back to the Matterhorn. Lol. Also I say she/he because the Tinkerbell that flies is played by both male and female actors. That, and seeing Alice on her cell phone cussing out her boyfriend while smoking a cig at the in-between was pretty friggin' hilarious. Maybe not the craziest, but certainly the grossest. One day, a kid had ate a bunch of pasta with marinara and then promptly threw it all up right in front of the entrance to Big Thunder Mountain. It was a huge pile of watery barf, easily 2 feet wide and 3 feet long. So we called custodial and set up a couple of trash cans to do our best to block the area off so people couldn't step in it. This dude, wearing all white shirt, shorts, shoes, comes running down the path from the exit of the ride to try and get back into the line as soon as he can. We tried to yell at him to stop running, but it was too late. He thought he would be a super cool guy and jump between the trash cans. He didn't count on there being a river of barf. So he jumps, lands in the barf and his legs slip out from under him, and he falls/rolls into all the red marinara barf. It took him a few seconds to comprehend what had just happened, but he eventually let out a blood-curdling scream. Thankfully a manager was walking by when all this happened, so my fellow greeter and I didn't have to actually deal with him. We did have to write a quick report on what we had witnessed, in case the guy tried to sue or something though. As far as I know, nothing came of it though. Undefined. I also was a jungle cruise skipper during my time at Disneyland, and lots of crazy things happen in the jungle. Most of them are kind of boring, like a swarm of bees forming. So all the boats had to reverse back into the dock or someone falling into the water, which is gross. I wasn't actually in the boat for this one, but I was working the attraction that day. They loaded a boat and sent it out into the jungle, as normal. The skipper got about halfway through the trip and out of nowhere, this Korean lady started screaming at the poor guy sitting in front of her. The skipper tried to calm the lady down, but she kept screaming and yelling at him in Korean. Then, she full-on attacks him. She lunged at him with claw hands and started scratching at his face and kicking him. He was doing his best to fend her off, but she was on him. When things like this happen, it's what we call the 4-shot. The skipper loads 4 rounds into the pistol, fires them all to alert the other boats in the jungle, and hopefully the people on the dock. Then radios into the dock that they are having a medical/security issue. Then they just book it as fast as that boat can go back into the dock. The dock stops loading and just sends everyone ahead of the boat into the jungle so that the emergency boat can come right in. So skipper gets the boat into the dock, and when she rounded the corner, basically half the people on her boat were trying to hold this lady down while the guy she attacked was cowering in the back bleeding. Luckily, security had arrived and medical shortly after. It took 3 security officers to eventually subdue the lady, while medical services strapped her down to a gurney. After they had her secured, they escorted her backstage behind Tomorrowland to an ambulance. Eventually they got a translator and tried to talk to her and her family, and it turns out that the lady was schizophrenic and had decided that she wasn't taking her medication that day so she could try to better enjoy the park. She just happened to have an episode in the middle of the jungle, and the poor dude sitting in front of her got all the wrath. I don't remember what the compensation was for everyone on the boat, but I know it was definitely more than a riad. Used to work attractions at an unnamed land. On the Indiana Jones adventure there are 348 height checkpoints which small guests must hit, and there's often drama here. One of the lowest points in my Disney career was having to height check a midget. I couldn't make eye contact. All he said was, "Really?" And I hung my head in shame and nodded. Another time an African American family had made it all the way down to the last checkpoint, which was in the station. The poor kid was too short, but the mom lost her mind when I said her child couldn't ride. She started screaming at the top of her lungs that this racist moth earth people won't let my precious baby girl on the ride. You are racist. You are racist etc etc. Cleared out the station. Temporarily shut down the ride. She was escorted out and banned from the park. TL. Doctor. Height checked a midget. Didn't let a little girl ride because she was black. Former ride operator here. If you haven't been called a racist/asshole/child hater at least once a week, you aren't doing it right. Late to the party, but I was a safari driver at the Kilimanjaro safari attraction in Animal Kingdom. We had this elephant named Willy. Willy was an exhibitionist. I was driving a safari one day, spewing out facts about elephants, when I hear a tiny voice from the back of TG truck yell, "M-O-O-O-O-M. He has 5 legs." I turn, and sure enough, there's Willy, standing with his 5-foot-long dick just swaying in the Florida breeze. I had to turn my mic off. I was laughing so hard. TL. Dr. Elephant Penis. Willy just liked to show his namesake off. Former cast member in Disney World. I picked up a shift at Frontierland Foods. I was warned beforehand that in the kitchen there was a lot of animosity between the Spanish and Haitian cast members. So midway through my shift there's a lot of yelling back and forth between the two groups, and it culminates with one of the older Haitian dudes taking a cooking sheet, not one of those flimsy aluminum foil ones, the actual metal ones, and bashed him over the head with it hard as hell. Needless to say, that was the last time I picked up a shift anywhere. Not a cast member, but I witnessed a cast member do this. I was in line at Disneyland, California with a group of Japanese teenage tourists were ahead of me in line. I speak Japanese, so I could understand that they were making fun of Americans. They were mostly saying things to the effect of, "On TV they seem so cool, but all of these Americans are so fat and ugly." They were laughing and even occasionally pointing at people. I was just staying quiet, but then one of the cast members who evidently also spoke Japanese walked up to them and told them in perfect Japanese, "You guys should really be careful. Most Americans can speak Japanese." They all froze up and looked around at people, many of whom were giving them dirty looks. I nodded at them like I was backing him up, and they were horrified. They all left the line promptly afterward. This is hilarious. I have a similar story. The long and short of it, my uncle teaches Japanese at a language institute. He and a bunch of students were out to lunch when they overheard a group of Japanese tourists having a similar conversation about all the food fat Americans eat. My uncle, in Japanese, whispered over to the tourists something akin to most Americans speak Japanese, but they are too polite to tell you they can hear and understand you. When the table of tourists scoffed, a number of the students at my uncle's table began conversing loudly in Japanese. The tourists finished their meal quickly and in silence. Similar story on a bus in Edinburgh back in my school days. Was last year prefect and ran into a pupil. I was a prefect in their house. He spoke Norwegian as his dad was from Norway. We sat on the bus and right beside us was apparently these two Norwegian girls were also on bus sitting beside us and talking in their home tongue. I noticed he wasn't exactly paying attention to our conversation and kept on glancing back. They apparently were saying how weird the Scottish people are, and then talked about my buddy saying look at him. He keeps on looking back at us. What a weird boy. To this he then just says to them in their tongue I speak Norwegian. They didn't talk for the rest of the bus ride. I knew a guy who was studying in Moscow with a friend, both from Ireland. They were in a bar one night and overheard two other guys speaking to each other in Irish Gaelic about how hot all the girls were and all the things they wanted to do to them. Figuring that nobody would understand a reasonable assumption in 99.9% of cases. My friend walked over to the man, in Irish with a Russian accent, said something to the effect of you'll want to be more respectful of our women or my friend and I may have to escort you out of this bar. Pretty sure they pissed themselves. They were convinced they were going to be killed by two Russian spies.